led Democrats in the Senate for a decade, but Harry Reid called one of his proudest accomplishments the impact he had on presidential history, encouraging Barack Obama to run.
I did call him into my office and told him he should take a look at it. And he was stunned that, because I was the first one that ever suggested that to him. When he was reelected, that was one of the most moving phone calls I've ever received, because he said, you're the reason I'm here.
He spearheaded epic legislative battles like Obamacare with a scrappy style he learned during his impoverished childhood. Reid was born, shaped, and scarred in Searchlight, Nevada, essentially a truck stop outside Las Vegas. He grew up in a shack with no running water where this trailer now sits. He took us there in 2006. His mother did laundry for the local brothels. His dad always looking for work as a miner. Both drank heavily. During that 2006 visit to Searchlight, he casually pointed out where his father took his own life at 58 years old.
This house right here, that last room is a bedroom, that's where he killed himself.
He fought his way out of poverty as a boxer. As a politician, he was never afraid to punch below the belt. He even took on the mob as a young politician in Las Vegas.
A wide variety of adjectives have been written about you.
Some good, some bad.
Some good, some bad. Let me just read a few. Scrappy, tough, blunt, canny behind-the-scenes mastermind, ruthless. Are all those fair?
Well, that's what people think, and that's what they think. They are entitled to their opinion.
As Senate Democratic leader, Reid was a polarizing figure. Republicans argued a lot of congressional gridlock stemmed from his hardball tactics.
Seen the turning of the tide.
But he reveled in playing the political bad guy, calling then-President George W. Bush a loser and a liar well before politicians used those L words.
I don't really care. I don't want to be somebody I'm not.
During the Trump presidency, however, Reid changed his tune about Bush.
In hindsight, I wish every day for a George Bush again. I think that he and I had our differences, but no one ever questioned his patriotism. There's no question in my mind that George Bush would be Babe Ruth in this league that he's in with Donald Trump. Donald Trump wouldn't make the team.
In 2012, he used the Senate floor to accuse Mitt Romney of not paying his taxes, even though he had no evidence.
He's refused to release his tax returns, as we know. Let him prove that he has paid taxes, because he hasn't.
No, I don't regret that at all.
Some people have even called it McCarthyite.
Well, they call it whatever they want. Romney didn't win, did he?
Years later, Reid did ask to meet with Romney to make amends.
Shook hands and put stuff behind us.
Why was it so important for you to tie up that loose end?
I try to do that with everybody.
Reid also inspired fierce loyalty from many of his longtime aides as well as fellow senators. Not all out of fear, but affection. He often told colleagues he loved them, even in public.
I love you, John Kerry.
He had a storybook romance with wife Landra, his high school sweetheart. The two converted to Mormonism together when they married.
She had a pair of Levi's yesterday. I said, man, that just looks so good.
That's amazing.
But it's true.
In January 2015, Reid, a workout addict who ran numerous marathons, had a brutal exercise accident that left him severely bruised and blind in one eye. It cemented his decision to retire. A few years later, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The effects of chemo made it hard for him to walk. We went to see him in Las Vegas.
That's one of my keepsakes from Donald Trump.
Never any complaints.
I'm doing fine. I'm busy. I work quite hard.
Reid was an unlikely political leader in today's media age, soft-spoken and gaffe-prone. But he played the inside game like no one could.
I didn't make it in life because of my athletic prowess. I didn't make it because of my good looks. I didn't make it because I'm a genius. I made it because I worked hard. One of the things that I hope that people look back at me and say, if Harry Reid could make it, I can.
I want to bring in CNN presidential historian Tim Neftali and senior political.
They're caught in the crosshairs, regardless of whether it's President Biden or White House or states.
Was born out of when President Obama first came to the Senate as Senator Obama, Harry Reid saw in this person somebody who could be the next president of the United States at a time when obviously there were many other senators in that caucus who were all angling and thinking about that role. He comes to President Obama, or then Senator Obama, and says, hey, if you want it, you should go for it. And I think had a major role to play in urging him to do so. Obviously, just a year into his Senate tenure. And then obviously as he becomes senator, knowing that healthcare was the first and major, legislative thing that he needed to get done, really was the legislative captain for it, and going through all of the travails of it and finally getting it across the finish line. There was trust not only in Harry Reid, but obviously Speaker Pelosi.
So number 5 Notre Dame and the PlayStation field.
To try to get him to be ready on fight night.
You're just trying to shut him down.
Dakota News Now.
That leads us to a COVID-19 update here in South Dakota. The Department of Health reporting more than 1,200 new cases today. The update includes testing information dating back to last Thursday, so keep that in mind. The number of active infections increased slightly. It now sits just below 7,300. The number of hospitalizations has dropped below 230. A new report from the U.S. Government Accountability Office shows the average time for real estate appraisals in South Dakota is one of the longest in the entire country. It says in 2018, the average time to complete a residential real estate appraisal in South Dakota was 17 days. Only North Dakota had a longer timeline at 21 days. According to the report, most states were able to complete appraisals in about 6 to 10 days. The state's appraisal program has come under scrutiny over allegations of nepotism involving one of Governor Noem's daughters. As our I-Team first reported this month, the South Dakota Department of Labor and SDSU are now collaborating to help future appraisers here in the state.
A dreaded benchmark in oil prices could return next year. Oil industry analysts are looking for signs of a return to $100 a barrel. The U.S. has an undersupply of oil for a variety of reasons, including the Biden administration's canceling of pipelines, drilling moratoriums, and continued labor shortages. Saudi Arabia is warning global production could fall significantly. Oil prices are currently at about $72 a barrel. Some analysts believe higher oil prices will lead to an increase in gas prices. And taking a look now at gas prices in our region, South Dakotans are paying the most at an average of $3.17 a gallon of regular gasoline. Iowa drivers are seeing the lowest average at about $3.02, and in Minnesota, drivers there are paying about $3.08 on average. A fight is underway in Del Rapids to save an aging building. The St. Mary Grade School was built in 1910, but officials say that building needs to be torn down to make way for a new one, plus an addition to the high school. Several alum are now pushing back on the $8 million project, saying they've not been given a fair shake in this process. A task force was formed 4 years ago, and officials say that open meetings and surveys were made available. Those opposing the project also say the school district needs to preserve history by renovating the school rather than tearing it down.
Look at the old courthouse in Sioux Falls. Go look at all the old buildings downtown Sioux Falls and go look at them, and you like what they've done. Why don't you want that done to this?
The demolition is expected to happen sometime within the next year. In an email to Dakota News Now, Del Rapids St. Mary's Superintendent Father Shane Stephen said the cost estimate to bring the building up to code would be roughly 85% of the $9 million proposed budget for the entire project, adding that the estimate does not include significant upgrades to the school. He also says renovations would not add the square footage that's needed to meet modern classroom standards.
Well, retailers were hoping for a strong holiday shopping season. Did they get it? What some new numbers are showing tonight, that's coming up. Hello, Austin.
Hey there, Brian. We're looking at wind chill alerts across most of the Dakota News Now coverage area, and that's going to lead to a pretty cold day ahead, but will temperatures moderate heading towards New Year's? Details coming up.
And it's a form of money many still aren't very familiar with, but a lot of people have used it for a very specific reason over the last couple of weeks. We'll tell you about that coming up on Dakota News Now at 9.
Dakota News Now, sponsored by Ford.
tough to say goodbye for that man who will leave his alma mater to go coach Louisiana Tech.
Find new places.
As he was telling us, it's all about the players.
And that's exactly what he made it about.
I help others, but I need to help protect myself.
Lessons for the Biden administration and how Reid operated. Could they use a Reid now, or are there lessons learned?
I think they could use some of the toughness of Harry Reid. He came up as this boxer, as we were talking about, and then he brought the boxing right into the political ring. And he didn't mind being very pugnacious about getting his way, and he held sway as a result of that. But he left in a wake. These very, very tough decisions with Biden. Now, with Biden facing enormous pressure coming from his left, mostly from the progressives, to get rid of the filibuster so that they can get some things done. The Democrats are being blocked now, even though they have this slight majority. They're being blocked by the filibuster. And there's a real push on, say, for the voting rights bill. And Democrats almost unanimously support the restoration or the protection of voting in the country. And yet it may not happen unless you get rid of the filibuster. Get rid of the filibuster long term, you may invite the very problems we're seeing now that Mitch McConnell sort of cleverly identified way back then. It's not just those three on the Supreme Court. There were a rash of judges appointed by Trump who will be with us for years, and they would not have been there had the filibuster existed.
These federal bench judges, of course, still Article III court. And I'll be interested to talk to Stacey Abrams later in the show and get her take on the filibuster as well. But David, I want to stick with you for a second. You also heard Dana present Reid with how people described him. Scrappy, tough, blunt, mastermind, ruthless. He didn't dispute it, did he?
He was all of those things. And I think people were always taken aback by it because he was not a big, muscular guy. He was somewhat slight sort of individual, but he was tough as nails underneath it. He had a caring side. He had an empathic side. He was loyal to people. He was loyal to his friends. He was certainly loyal to Searchlight, the tiny little place that he came from. And he was proud of coming from Searchlight and coming up in the way he did. But at the same time, you can't deal with Harry Reid without seeing there was a complexity there that is really, really striking. Many good things accomplished, some things that are really, really questionable now.
But also really firm with bad people. And I think that's what the citizens want. They want you to be a good use of character and judgment in this office. And so where are the citizens of Baltimore? Do they want a tough prosecutor? Do they want people to put bad people behind bars? Is that where they're at? Will that message of tough on crime work with the community, or do they want Mosby, who's just light and letting everybody out?
I think what the citizens of Baltimore want is a prosecutor who's going to actually do the job, but also understands that we can't just incarcerate everyone, right? They want somebody who's going to offer actual common sense, practical solutions. Some of my programs are very progressive. I have a women's empowerment court to give women the tools that they need to not reoffend. But at the same time, I understand that we need to work with the police. You know, I was a prosecutor for 12 years. 9 of those, I just tried murders and shootings. I never lost a homicide because I worked with the police to make sure that those cases were strong. And that is what we need. We need somebody who is going to be fair and reasonable, and also who is going to enforce the law.
Roy, I hope that the citizens look at this and say, I do want someone who's compassionate, someone who will try to divert people and rehabilitate people who deserve it. But there's some people who don't deserve to be rehabilitated. They don't deserve a second chance. They should be behind bars because it keeps the community safe. I think that's what Baltimore needs. That's what Chicago needs, LA needs, San Francisco needs, is people who are compassionate but really tough on the bad people. Hopefully you'll have a great race, and if you win, that's the kind of prosecutor you'll be. Thank you for joining me tonight on The Angle.
Thank you so much.
All right. After imposing crippling COVID mandates, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio wants us to believe he really cares about small businesses. In moments, we'll hear from one owner who's not buying de Blasio's act. Then multiple patrons were thrown out of a Burger King for not flashing their vaccine passports. We'll speak to 2 of them. So stay right there. We're coming back.
About that and blamed Republicans for it. But as you know, there are a lot of people, and not just Republicans, who blame Harry Reid and his public style, whether it was going on the Senate floor to question whether Mitt Romney paid taxes, and then later to acknowledge that maybe he didn't have the goods on that. But hey, Mitt Romney didn't win, did he? That kind of smash mouth political style may have contributed to it. But as Faz will tell you, that was how Harry Reid was. He was going to get from point A to point B by any means necessary. And when I say by any means necessary, he certainly had his own boundaries, but they were broader than most politicians' boundaries were in terms of what they were willing to say and do to get things done, and that was who he was, and to the end. I have to tell you, that's who he was until the end.
Mm-hmm. You know, Faz, we're going to take some more time because this is an incredible conversation about an incredible American, an incredible leader, an incredible statesman. Faz, you know, progress is easier to observe in the rearview mirror, but how has the Democratic Party progressed from 2008, 2009?
That cistern has been exposed his whole life.
5'11", 205-pounder out of Orlando, Florida. He has the ability to break tackles.
California, ladies and gentlemen.
Quarterback.
I am the luckiest guy in the world.
Super Bowl winning coach, pioneering broadcaster, video game icon. A larger-than-life personality, John Madden was by any definition a true original. During his 30-year broadcasting career, Madden was widely considered the voice of the National Football League.
You have to attack them with the pass, and you have to attack them deep with the pass.
His passionate way of calling games with unique catchphrases,
Packers came out, they went boom, and they got 10 points.
And a love for using a telestrator helped explain the game to hardcore and casual fans across America. He called NFL games for all 4 major networks, announcing 11 Super Bowls and earning 16 sports Emmys during his time in the broadcast booth. Madden's NFL playing career was short-lived. He was drafted in 1958 by the Philadelphia Eagles, but a knee injury cut it all short. That's when he decided to try his hand at coaching, eventually becoming the youngest head coach in professional football history at the age of 33. In 1977, he led the Oakland Raiders to a Super Bowl victory and is still the franchise's all-time wins leader. Madden was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame for his coaching career in 2006.
Boom! Tough acting, tin acting.
Madden was a television advertiser's dream, becoming the pitch man for numerous brands.
Let me tell you, Ace is a place for me.
In 1988, Madden entered the video game world, lending his voice and name to what's now called Madden NFL.
You know, anything that goes that far, that fast, ought to have dinner and an in-flight movie.
His video game is still the most popular football video game ever, selling more than 100 million copies worldwide. Whether it was his video game, his broadcasting career, or as a Hall of Fame coach, his passion for the game is what will always be remembered.
Some of us think maybe we will be immortal, that we'll live forever, but when you really think about it, we're not going to be. But I say this, through this bust, with these guys, in that hall, we will be forever.
Joining me now, Bomani Jones. He's a sports journalist and host of The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Bomani, it's good to see you. I've been following your Twitter feed this evening and seeing just the impact that he has made. And one thing you said was, it's a reason people of our generation, frankly, don't appreciate any other color commentator in football. Tell me what John Madden meant to football.
So I think the most interesting thing about Madden, and you look at this from top to bottom from his coaching career all the way through, and even with the advertisement stuff that you saw with the Tinactin and all those things, is that he was a regular dude, right? Like there was a very approachable quality to him, where football coaches now are much more slick CEO types and ultimately very boring. You never said that about Madden, but there was something really tangible and approachable about him. So if you go back and look at him in his coaching days, with like the short sleeve dress shirt and the tie, like he looked like almost like Dan Connor from Roseanne going to work, except he was coaching one of the best football teams there was. Then he becomes a broadcaster, and the way that he approached it was so much like a teacher, where he really enjoyed what he was talking about and always explained it in a very digestible way that was never intended to show you how much he knew as much as how much there was that you could learn and then pick up from it. Like the video game, to me, when you start talking about him, that's like Jimmy Dean on the sausage almost, right? Like that's a very secondary part of what he was. But for a significant portion of time, for a lot of people, especially those of us who grew up at the tail end of the monoculture era in this country, you look at John Madden really as almost like somebody you knew, because he approached everything like you would hope somebody you knew would approach it.
It's true. And when you heard him do commentary, you didn't get the feeling of saying, shh, I want to hear the game. You wanted to hear his insight. You wanted to hear him add on. You liked it. You smiled. He was also, as you mentioned, he was the head NFL coach at just the age of 32. I mean, explain how just big of a deal that is. 32 years old, a head coach in the NFL?
Well, not just 32, but I know at the time that he retired, he had the highest winning percentage of any head coach. Like the Raiders were one of the marquee franchises of the NFL for the 1970s. And so part of, coaching the Raiders is you work for Al Davis. So he's going to do a whole lot of what's going on there. But with Madden, the record that he put up and leading this kind of outlaw franchise, like it's very interesting that he is such a beloved figure, because the Raiders are not a universally beloved sort of organization. But to be that young and be able to coach a team and be consistently successful, and then ultimately when he left, it wasn't because he wasn't winning, it's because he became terrified of flying, which again became another very human part of the John Madden story.
You mentioned wins. Of course, I'm from Minnesota, so Minnesota's still mad about the Super Bowl. So I'm going to put that out there for a second and leave that there for a second. But Monty, let me ask you though, you say that Madden set an unreachable standard. Tell me about what that means.
Well, for me, the thing with Madden was just as a communicator, right? Like we can separate this from football. If you're talking about anything, the ability to do it in a conversational tone while also being informative, while also never being condescending, is just really, really, really hard to do. So for all these people who do the color commentary job on football, nobody really has a really high overall Q rating. And I really think it is because people like me, I'm 41, John Madden was the standard of that, like how you can explain these things very well, how you can be likable while you do it. It's hard for anybody else to live up to that. Like when you start talking about like Jerry Rice is the greatest wide receiver of all time, or Jim Brown is the greatest running back of all time, those are things that nobody really argues with you about. John Madden is the greatest sports broadcaster on television of all time. You're not going to get anybody to argue with you about that either.
Well, a lot of people miss the enthusiasm he would bring to the game, the idea of his phrasing, things like, what was it, wham and boom and doink and all the different things he would talk about. But I think about John Madden, I don't think about Steve Madden, I think about John Madden. You are the same age, Bomani, so forgive me, we are both 41. So I remember every person I knew was always playing Madden, had the legacy of that. I know it's secondary, but he was somebody that people associate. I mean, he essentially was the brand of the NFL. He was enjoyable about it, and he had the staying power in a league that most people are able to churn and get out. How did he have the staying power? Was it the Madden bust, the authenticity, the fact that he had been a player, that he had been a coach, he'd never worked a day in his life, as he talked about?
I think the authenticity is probably the biggest thing. I mean, that's still the most attractive quality that anybody can present, that even if people don't agree with you necessarily. Like Charles Barkley's success as a broadcaster is a testament to that. Authenticity wins out above all else. But as a broadcaster, you got to provide, for lack of a better term, a service to the people who are listening to you. And so Madden stopped being in the background, which is where most broadcasters really are. And his partner, Pat Summerall, was so good at being in the background and knowing how to pick his spots, when to get in, when to get out. Madden used a lot more words, but when he's there doing it and he came out there, you were always better off for the commentary that you got from him, because it always was so explanatory. Like that was the thing for me in watching it, is I really did feel like I was learning things about football. Like he's almost like the football version of like Schoolhouse Rock in that way. You're learning, but it's medicine, but it tastes good,
Everything but the soundtrack. Thank you so much, Bomani. Nice talking to you.
All right, you too.
Well, the U.S. has now hit a record number of COVID cases. This is 2 years into the pandemic. What you need to know after this.
Finding stuff is hard, but finding
Cash plus complimentary maintenance when you sign up for Ford Pass Rewards. memory, but unfortunately, it seems like New Yorkers have forgotten their history. Under no circumstances is it okay for a government to control our lives this way.
Immune health.
Your parents seem to take such a delight in you, and
to be connected to him. But Carter was such an active.
Instead is the punt returner for the Gophers, who are looking.
Just play someone brainy on TV. I'm an actual neuroscientist, and I love the science.
He's got her, and he gets rocked again. Lesnar.
I got this robe.
Now it's easy to help.
We have people who bring their best. We have people who travel through blizzards and storms to show people what's happening. Having people in Pierre and in Aberdeen helps really make a big state small. You can watch at 5:30, 6:30, you can watch at 9, you can watch at 4. It's not the standard newscast anymore.
Are you looking for heartfelt messages filled with wholesome life lessons and good old-fashioned family values?
That is literally the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Hey, if we can't lie to each other, who can we lie to?
Family.
Well, Happy Hour on Fox is a little different.
The depths of your degeneracy continue to astound me. Really? Still?
Weekdays from 5 to 7 on Fox Sioux Falls.
We should watch it.
Dad, honestly, it was razor thin. Your barbecue is so...
He was very clear.
General Jason Rounsberg met today in Pierre, but spent much of their time behind closed doors.
And a temporary fix for holiday pay for state corrections officers in South Dakota. But will it become permanent? These stories and more still to come on Dakota News Now at 9 on Fox Sioux Falls. Hey, Austin.
Hey there, Andrea. It is going to be a pretty cold day for our Wednesday, looking at that day planner for Sioux Falls. A lot of cloud cover, though. We'll start the day right around 2 degrees, and we'll top out in the upper teens. And the good news is the wind won't be nearly as strong tomorrow, but we'll still have single-digit wind chills expected. Now, in Aberdeen, expect the wind chills to remain below 0 for most of the day. We're going to start at 7 a.m., 19 below. We should get to about 3 above tomorrow, which is going to be about 20 degrees below average for this time of the year. And in Pierre, we'll start the day right around 0, maybe a couple degrees below, but we'll top out in the upper teens by the afternoon hours. We'll have more on your complete forecast and much more news coming up in the next half hour of Dakota News Now. That's when we come back.
End the year feeling great.
Animal Champion T-shirt. This limited edition.
Joe, you?
Well, me speaking for myself.
In Trump time, you were the guy who had the Green Bay Packers sweep strategy to go up to Capitol Hill. Pence is the quarterback. That we had 100 people working on the Green Bay team as linemen, halfbacks, and fullbacks.
7 a.m.
Back to the battle.
And what West Virginia produces up front. I think the largest guy up front for West Virginia is about 280 pounds, 275. Their linebackers.
Was undefeated. Not.
And done all my homework, and so really.
The Knicks' Mitchell Robinson led the way tonight for New York, 14 points on 7 of 8 shooting.
And I'm not sure how high those numbers are going to go, but they're definitely going to be higher than what we're seeing today.
So what are you seeing in your hospital? I mean, what are you hearing from patients and other doctors right now? I mean, you're in Texas, which I know, of course, as other states did, had a different approach, shall we say, to COVID restrictions. What are you seeing now?
You know, I didn't work clinically today, but I logged into our computer system to check the board, and almost every complaint that I saw was shortness of breath, runny nose, congestion, COVID testing. There are people that are coming to emergency departments just to get a COVID test, even though they don't have symptoms, because they can't get tested anywhere else. Emergency departments are full, our waiting rooms are full, and people are definitely getting very sick.
I mean, it's surprising to think people going there for tests. I mean, you would not want to be around in an emergency room where you're obviously going to be exposed to people who might likely be infected. That seems an odd thing, but it's a testament to where we are with the shortages right now. I'm wondering, Dr. Bissett, is there a difference that you're seeing for the symptoms between the Omicron variant and the Delta variant? We're hearing that one may be less severe or different. Is that true in practice?
It seems so far that Omicron is a bit milder than the prior variants that we've seen. But the caveat to that is we're seeing so many cases of Omicron, even though in general it's a milder variant, there are still going to be those people who end up very sick and need to be hospitalized and need to be in the ICU. So the hospitalization numbers and the death rates are still picking up, though slower than the caseloads.
That's an important point. People should not rest on their laurels and think, oh, okay, if it's less severe, never mind. It's still very serious. It's still COVID-19. It's still a variant at this point, of course. What are you seeing for people who are vaccinated?
Unexpected accident or illness happens, it can cause.
Is it less? What's happening on the ground?
People who are vaccinated and boosted are becoming infected less than those who are not vaccinated, but breakthrough infections are still occurring. I will tell you this, though, those who are vaccinated and boosted are not dying, and that's what the vaccines were designed to do. That's what they were implemented for, is to prevent severe disease and prevent hospitalizations. We really have to change our mindset when it comes to COVID-19 and these vaccines, because I see a lot of people that are upset when they get breakthrough cases, but remember, the vaccines were not designed to prevent you from getting COVID. They were designed to prevent you from dying from COVID.
It's a very smart point that needs.
Since being the Frank Mir, Shane Carwin reacted on his blog, writing,
call or log on right now.
Were lined up to overturn the election, which was going perfectly, they say, prior to the storming of the Capitol.
That's right, Jonathan. Great to see you. And these Republicans, pro-insurrectionists, they don't even deserve to be in your segment tonight, where you're talking about the loss of the great Harry Reid and the loss of John Madden, my constituent. But we have to talk about them because too much is at stake. So I will pay my honor and respect to both of those legends. The streets of heaven are crowded with giants this evening. But here, as we approach the midterm elections, we have a party that has chosen over and over, the Republican Party, violence instead of voting. And Senator Paul, what he said in that tweet is essentially to try and rile up Republican voters to try and move against Democratic efforts and suggest there's something nefarious with persuading voters, organizing voters, mobilizing voters, and aiming them and marching them to the ballot box on Election Day. There's nothing wrong with that. That's called democracy. But because they can't win elections and they choose violence, they're now trying to demonize that.
Mm-hmm. You know, I would love your assessment on this, and because just reading that is sort of, it's stunning to me. So is it, you know, just delusions of grandeur from Bannon and Navarro to think that they had it all set up? Or is it right that actually the mob attack on the Capitol may have saved the election certification?
That was the goal. The goal was for us not to be able to certify the election. And that's because, Jonathan, this is a party that is so disaligned with where Americans are. So if we just vote, their anti-choice, anti-voter, anti-climate, anti-gun safety agenda is not going to work. And so they are shifting now to using violent rhetoric, threats, against lawmakers to try and wield power. That's all they have. But they're coming. And if we're not ready, we're going to see when they rule in 2023 that a woman's right to make her own healthcare decisions, gone. Your right to vote, gone. Your right to, God forbid, work hard and do better and dream bigger, gone. It'll be an authoritative society if we don't mobilize right now. And they're putting up barriers. And we're going to have to jump over those barriers, crawl through glass, walk through fire. And on the other side, they're going to make sure that even if we win, secretaries of state in many of the states could reverse the outcome. And so we're going to have to fund legal efforts, and we're going to have to, take and clone Mark Elias. We're going to need 1,000 Mark Eliases across the country to fight what we're up against. But I'm in. I think your viewers are in, because if we lose, we could lose everything.
Congressman Eric Swalwell, great state of California. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Say that again?
I'm fired up at this late hour.
You are. You absolutely are. Congressman Swalwell, have a good rest of your night.
My pleasure.
How a request from the Biden White House is affecting the January 6th Select Committee's investigation into the final days of the Trump White House. That's next.
Aleve
Started at CBS, later partnering with Pat Summerall, becoming the network's top announcing duo. Madden moved to Fox in 1994 and later moved to NBC's Sunday Night Football. Madden earned a bachelor and master's degree from Cal Poly in 1958. He was drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles, but a knee injury ended his career. He was brought to the Oakland Raiders as a linebacker coach. Madden then replaced the head coach at age 32, beginning a remarkable 10-year run that earned him a spot in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The Raiders, now based in Las Vegas, said in a statement that the Raiders family is deeply saddened by the passing of the legendary John Madden, and sportscaster Jim Gray calls him a great coach and the best broadcaster ever. Jerry Jones, the Dallas Cowboys owner, says, "I'm not aware of anyone who has made a more meaningful impact on the National Football League than John Madden." And also a short while ago this evening, the death was announced of former Democratic Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. 82-year-old Reid of Nevada battled pancreatic cancer. Sean.
Matt, thank you for that report. It is a sad day for football. All right. For weeks, the Ingram Angle has been bringing you the latest on Leah Thompson, the UPenn athlete who's upending women's swimming.
Network of the most successful real estate agents in America that'll sell your home.
No, and he just never got it to the right side. He kicked it straight.
He likes that ego part of it, and that's just who Brock is too.
Reporter Beth Warden shows us how this update is intended to affect all state employees and what more can be done to change pay structure in the long term.
Today, I spoke with the executive director of the State Employees Association. He says the governor's office announcing a full 12-hour holiday pay for correctional officers is welcome information, but it's just the beginning. This situation stemmed from correctional officers having a mandatory increase in shifts from 8 to 12 hours, but only being paid holiday pay for 8. The change also affects other state employees who work 12-hour shifts. Now that this issue has gained attention of state employees and legislators alike, there is a hope that this is the beginning for better working conditions and benefits. Some state employees are ready to share their stories after seeing their paychecks drastically cut by a change in health care plans last year.
That are ready to testify during the legislative session to appropriations about how the health plans have affected them. And there are some negative effects.
A bill is being drafted by Senator Reynold Nesipa to not only affect holiday pay, but in certain circumstances start overtime at 36 hours.
And you can see a draft of that state employee compensation bill at DakotaNewsNow.com.
South Dakota lawmakers have wrapped up the first of 2 days of meetings to go over the case for impeaching State Attorney General Jason Ravnsborg.
But in an unprecedented move, the Select Committee considering impeachment met almost exclusively behind closed doors today. Austin Goss has the details.
The impeachment probe into the actions of Attorney General Jason Ravnsborg entered a new phase on Tuesday. But much of the process so far has been conducted behind closed doors. After gaveling in at 10 a.m., committee members took an oath related to their role on the impeachment committee. Then they immediately went into executive session, ending any ability for the public to witness the proceedings. Nick Nemec was at the Capitol Tuesday. His cousin Joe Beaver was hit and killed by Ravnsborg's car that September night in 2020. Nemec has attended every event related to the case against Ravnsborg since then.
I would tell them that I think the impeachable offenses extend beyond the day of the crash, the night of the crash. I think Attorney General Ravnsborg, because of his conduct since the crash, has shown that he's unfit for office.
For his part, House Speaker Spencer Goss says executive session was scheduled to provide the committee buffer time.
We've got to establish a path forward before we can take that first step. You guys are all privy to the Constitution and its interpretations, and that's why the makeup of the committee was put up to the way it is so that we can have those conversations and develop how we're going to move forward.
He also says that they are still committed to a transparent process.
We will be as transparent as humanly possible. Remember that there are going to be situations and areas in which we're not going to be able to be transparent or are going to have conversations in executive session. And the main reason for that is to ensure that fairness throughout the process is our utmost focus.
Makes me feel like they want to cover things up. I think the entire fruits of the investigation should be made public. I'm not hopeful that that will happen, but they need to be made public.
The committee is scheduled to reconvene Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. and then promptly return to executive session at 9:05 a.m. In Pierre, Austin Goss, Dakota News Now.
The price of a U.S. passport will now cost you $20 more. The State Department announced the price hike, saying the fee is necessary to maintain the security and quality of U.S. passports. Before the price increase, first-time or renewal passports cost $110 for adults and $80 for people under the age of 16. Passport processing time could take up to 11 weeks, while the expedited process can last up to 7 weeks. Customers will also be able to renew their passports online through new security machines.
This morning on Dakota News Now, we talked about how to manage your stress heading into the new year, as things can be stressful going into a new year.
We also had a little bit of snow on the radar this morning that we were talking about, the cold temperatures, and we're going to continue to talk.
I think it will help their case in the Supreme Court because it shows, first of all, that the executive branch and the legislative branch are cooperating and working, that the executive branch is taking into serious account national security, and in waiving the privilege that he has balanced the public interest and the public need for this information with the protection of the presidency by continuing executive privilege and protecting national security. So I think it will actually help them, not hurt them. And it doesn't mean a long delay. I think they can work quickly to resolve what documents are needed. Not everything that happened on January 6th is about the events of January 6th. There are things that happened on January 6th in the normal course of the White House that have to do with other policies. So it was the right thing to do.
Renee, your view?
I agree with Jill. I mean, initially the feeling is, why is Biden doing this? Why is Biden impeding the investigation? But I'm not sure that's exactly what he's doing. And I do think that it's important to show that there are things that are going to be protected, but these aren't things that are necessarily germane to this investigation.
Jill, something that David Frum has pointed out is that we want a legal resolution for something that requires a political solution. Are we asking too much for the January 6th committee or Justice Department, and justice can't be done for the full awfulness of January 6th through legal means?
No, I think, first of all, that the committee is looking at what laws it might need to pass to prevent a recurrence of this. What gaps are there in our existing laws that allow this to happen? Whereas the Department of Justice role is to hold accountable those who violated existing laws. So there's no reason why they can't proceed simultaneously. And it is not going to affect anything before the Supreme Court, which will always stay away from resolving disputes between Congress and the White House. Here, there's no dispute. They're on the same side. So I think that this is all really good, and that the documents that pertain to the events of January 6th in the way that anyone normal would define them. That is the march to the Capitol, the destruction of the Capitol, the intent to stop the count of the Electoral College votes. That is what is needed. Anything else that happened on January 6th would not be relevant. The Pentagon may have done things other than not dispatch troops to protect the Capitol, which would be relevant, but there are other things that happened at the Pentagon that should not be revealed because it would involve national security. So I think it's all good. And I am like Eric Swalwell, I am fired up and ready to fight for our democracy.
Well, all right then. Jill Wine-Banks, Renee Graham, thank you both so much for your time tonight. Coming up, Vice President Kamala Harris says Democrats aren't giving up on one of the most critical parts of the president's Build Back Better legislation, no matter what Joe Manchin thinks about it. That's next.
I don't just play someone brainy on TV.
The challenges for Minnesota offensively is how to get Ottman Bell, number 7.
Trunks for Carwin. You can see by Carwin's stance that it looks.
But they have the responsibility to try to listen. And that's what democracy is. Democracy doesn't guarantee you victory. It guarantees you a voice. And that's what we should be fighting for our children and for our nation.
The book, again, is called Stacey's Extraordinary Words, and they indeed are. Thank you, Stacey Abrams. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Laura.
Well, they want justice, and they want transparency. And they've got Ben Crump on the case. He's here to talk about what justice means for the family of 14-year-old who was fatally shot by the LAPD in a store dressing room after this.
I've always been running to meetings, errands. Now I'm running for me. I've always dreamed of seeing the world, but I'm not chasing my dream anymore. I made a financial plan to live it every day.
At Northwestern Mutual, our version of financial planning helps you live your dreams today. Find a Northwestern Mutual advisor at nm.com.
It's a mixed-up world, and the way we work looks a little different. But whether you embrace the new normal or just want to get back to the routines that feel right, X-Chair continues to be at the forefront of change, which is why we've launched the all-new X-Chair with ELEMAX. ELEMAX combines gentle body temperature regulation with stress-melting massage to increase your comfort working from home or at the office. Feel more refreshed in seconds with dual fans that actively deliver a cooling airflow. Or you can wrap your back in the soothing warmth of heat therapy and access 4 combinations of massage for deep relief from tension. Our patented dynamic variable lumbar support and SciFloat Infinite Recline technology remain unchanged. Order an X-Chair with ELEMAX today. Use code TV and get $100 off, plus a free footrest. Hey, change happened, and we've made it a good thing with all new ELEMAX from X-Chair. This holiday season, feel better than ever before. Order X-Chair with ELEMAX today. Use code TV and get $100 off and a free footrest.
This is what it feels like to file with TaxSlayer. Confident you'll get your guaranteed maximum refund.
Pick from my branches. Wait. Oh!
TaxSlayer. File fearlessly.
Honey latte.
What's the Wi-Fi password?
Oh, it's Hack Me.
It's easy to be unsafe.
Mom, what's your 401k number?
Now it's easy to help protect yourself. Opt into cyber safety at Norton.com.
And Doug.
Superpowers from a spider bite. I could use some help showing the world how Liberty Mutual customizes their car insurance, so they only pay for what they need. Did it work?
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Spider-Man No Way Home in theaters December 17th.
We're Carvana, the company who invented car vending machines and buying a car 100% online. Now we've
31 for a high on Thursday in Sioux Falls, so out ahead of that boundary, we're going to be much warmer. Down to 6 degrees for New Year's Day, and then we are back into the 30s as we head towards the beginning parts of the following week, the first full week of 2022. Now, Aberdeen will be on the backside of that that boundary, and we're only going to be about 5 degrees. But the good news is we do see a nice rebound in temperatures by Sunday and Monday with highs around 20. And in Pierre, we'll kind of be right in the middle of that boundary, so we'll see temperatures in the upper teens to near 20, down to 8 by Saturday, and then mid-30s with plenty of sunshine as we head towards Sunday and Monday.
All right, Austin, thank you. First responders in Hawarden, Iowa spent 9 hours Sunday fighting a fire that destroyed the Central Cafe. That's a popular gathering spot in town.
Yeah, the Hawarden fire chief says they had about 9 different mutual aid departments on scene helping to pull out the flames.
Our sister station, KTIV, spoke with a cafe owner and brings us more about what she's feeling after the loss.
It's so overwhelming.
It's a scene no small business owner wants to see.
I came here and see it's all gone, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it.
Central Cafe owner Jen McVeigh worked at the Haywarden staple for 5.5 years before becoming the owner. Now, after an early morning fire broke out at the cafe Sunday, the local favorite is a total loss, leaving McVeigh with a range of emotions.
I'm really heartbroken, and yesterday when we had a call, they told me that the cafe is on fire. I was like, I can't believe it. I was shocked.
But in the midst of a tragedy, McVeigh is already looking to the future.
We already talked to the insurance company, and we're planning to build a new one. But for now, I need to settle some stuff first, and then from there, we will go to the next step.
And in the wake of devastation, McVeigh says they're thankful for the community that stands behind them.
Nothing will stop us, to do whatever we can to serve the people, to serve the community, because they need us, I need them.
Haywarden fire officials say the cause of this fire is still under investigation.
Well, the Heroes Behind the Badges blood drive is off and running now. After one day, Sioux Falls Fire Rescue is leading the Sioux Falls Police Department, 111 donations to 108. Tomorrow, there will be a pop-up blood drive at the Shields on 41st and Western from 9 in the morning till about 5 in the evening. If you can't make that, you're always able to donate at either a Vera McKinnon or Sanford USD. We'll be right back.
Can't wait until 10 o'clock for the news? Get your late news when you want it. Dakota News Now at
Special. And together is the deal. In the housing market, every second counts. Find your next home.
I'm going to go with Terry McCullough. Remember when he was on stage dancing? I never dance. Dancing's bad. It never goes well for older men. That was mine. But listen, Horace and Allie Beth, thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate it. One MSNBC host has taken COVID paranoia to a whole new level. The Last Bite explains.
It's a celebration.
We represent purple districts across the country, and folks on both sides of the aisle want to see governance work. That's the opportunity we have between the House and the Senate to show them. We made that happen with the infrastructure bill. We can show them it can happen with Build Back Better. But there's more work we have to do to get there. And again, it's important that we have long-term durable policy that families can count on.
How imperative, leave aside what could possibly be in the final Build Back Better Act, but how imperative is it that a Build Back Better Act gets passed out of the Senate, passed out of the House again, and on the president's desk for his signature so that you and your colleagues can go out and campaign on it? If that doesn't happen, would that be a disaster for Democrats going into 2022?
Well, good policy is good politics. The way folks make decisions at election time is to understand what their member of Congress was able to do for them. And one of the biggest things we can do is make sure we're making investments in our communities and our families and workers. That's part of what this legislation would do. We did it with the infrastructure bill. We need to do it with Build Back Better as well.
Congresswoman Susan Del Bene of Washington, thank you for being with us tonight. Tonight's Last Word is next.
With Farmers Auto multi-policy discount, the more policies you have with us, the more
that there were going to be several people shopping. And so those are the questions that you ask, Laura Coach, and those are the questions that we want to get answered. They do training for these type of scenarios. What did the training tell them to do? We think that the training was not followed completely in this matter, and tragically, this little girl was left dying on the dressing room floor with her mother trying to wake her.
Oh. The description of what happened is just so heart-wrenching and heartbreaking. Ben Crump, thank you so much for your time tonight and for helping us to understand better. And please extend our deepest, my personal condolences to the family as well. I know you will. Thank you, Ben Crump.
Thank you, Laura.
And thank you all for watching. Our coverage continues.
You could wait all
and KDLT, from all of us to all of you, Have a very good evening and stay warm out there.
The First Alert Weather Team, only on Dakota News Now.
KSOO TV.
KXO. You're thinking, wait a minute, this is a baseball stadium with a retractable roof because of the heat in the summertime to keep the air conditioning.
This is a battleground. I would love.
From WeatherTech.
Every road in this hill.
Say the way to prevent police-induced
Texture, so they'll blend right in for a natural, effortless look.
President Carter at one of his at his church and went to one of the services, and my son was so greatly influenced.
Tonight at 10, and bracing for an influx of guests as temperatures dip on the night beat at 10.
Happens when you block heartburn with one Prilosec OTC.
To mind you want, at prices you really want.
The triple treat box, only from Pizza Hut.
The party of the year is
sugar and nutrients to support immune health.
Aleve X. It's fast, powerful, long-lasting.
Because of the brain damage he sustained as a...
Use your MasterCard to make secure purchase.
Plus, right before the ball drop, LL Cool J hits the stage.
Let's count it down together.
Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve with Ryan Seacrest, live on ABC.
We met somebody special.
It was myself, Obama!
Make organizing your home your...
The officers involved in Chris Ochoa's interrogation.
Check on down to his receiver in the flat.
Round number 2, declaring the winner by tap out due to arm triangle choke, and still the undisputed.
I tell people all the time, especially we do what we have to do.
If I die, avenge me.
Open the gate!
A new FBI Most Wanted next Tuesday, 10/9 Central.
By Shane Carwin and turns things around in the second round, locking in a beautiful arm triangle choke to secure his place.
Who just can do just about anything, win an Oscar.
We'll see you next time right here for another edition.
They are close. Gives them a...
At night.
Already the all-time leader in threes, Steph at it again, only needing one to reach 3,000. See and hear how he got it against the Nuggets. The Lakers lost 5 in a row, 2 games under 500, and in need of a win. Did they right the ship in Houston? And 3 days and counting until the college football playoff. We get you set with reports from Texas and Florida. That's ahead on SportsCenter.
I have never worked a day in my life. I went from player to coach to a broadcaster, and I am the luckiest guy in the world.
What a life it was. With that, we say welcome to SportsCenter with John Anderson. I'm Michael Lee. So often in sports, and especially on this very program, we as fans throw around the words legend and icon a bit too loosely. But using both of those words when mentioning John Madden may still fall short of describing the totality of his life and career. He's simply one of the most influential people in American sports history.
John Madden was a blocking sled guy at heart. Despite the video game fame, the immense broadcast popularity, football was his game, and he gave as much to it as he got out of it. He devoted his life to it, a life that ended today at the age of 85. Susie Culber tries to get to all of it.
Before he became one of the most influential TV analysts of all time,
It's really going to hurt them in their offensive line.
John Earl Madden grew up in the suburbs of San Francisco and earned all-conference honors as an offensive tackle at Cal Poly. In 1958, the Philadelphia Eagles selected him in the 21st round, but a knee injury before his rookie season kept him from ever playing a down in the NFL. Madden turned to coaching and learned the ropes from Don Coryell at San Diego State. It was there that Oakland Raiders owner Al Davis first met Madden at a practice and opened a door back to the NFL. Madden was hired as a linebackers coach in 1967, and 2 years later, at the age of 32, he became one of the youngest head coaches in NFL history.
I think if you play for somebody, you can't ask to play for anybody more dedicated to the football team. That's the only thing that he cares about in life, I think.
While he propelled the Raiders into the NFL's elite, Madden's teams lost 5 AFC title games in his first 7 years and suffered memorable defeats.
That's cut out of the air. The ball is pulled in by Franco Harris. Harris is going for a touchdown for Pittsburgh.
But in 1976, fortunes changed for the Silver and Black, and Oakland won its first Super Bowl by defeating the Minnesota Vikings.
John Madden's grin is from ear to ear. He looks like a split watermelon.
He was smart, he was a teacher, he was great. So he handled the players, he grew as a coach, and obviously he made his place in the sun as a truly great coach.
Madden retired after 10 seasons with 103 wins. Still a Raiders franchise record and the highest winning percentage of any coach in NFL history, just ahead of Vince Lombardi. After coaching, Madden reinvented himself with a career in television at CBS Sports. He quickly became known around the league for his engaging personality, flamboyant delivery,
Boom, you get him?
and his use of the telestrator. From 1979 to 2009, Madden worked for all 4 major American television networks and covered 11 Super Bowls. He never traveled by airplane due to anxiety from claustrophobia. Instead, Madden traveled in a tailor-made bus that became known as the Madden Cruiser.
First came together, I remember him sweating and thinking he was nervous about being on camera. When we did the opening, I didn't realize at the time that he had such fear of heights. He was so claustrophobic.
An unexpected twist in Madden's career came when Electronic Arts approached him about endorsing a new video game.
When we first started out, it was even before the video games, it was a computer game.
Welcome to the Madden Championship Edition.
The interactive obsession has since sold over 100 million copies worldwide and is still growing.
In your wildest dreams, we didn't expect it to be where it is.
The Pro Football Hall of Fame has recognized Madden twice. In 2002, he received the Pete Rozelle Radio Television Award, and 4 years later, the Veterans Committee selected him for induction into the Hall.
Today feels like the second time in my life that I'm being carried off the shoulders of others.
John Madden's connection with the NFL spanned more than 40 years, and his passion for the sport and the ability to simplify the complicated game of football are what define his legacy. His influence will continue to be felt for years to come.
I have never worked a day in my life. I went from player to coach to a broadcaster, and I am the luckiest guy in the world. The Raiders organization released the following statement on John Madden. Quote, "The Raiders family is deeply saddened by the passing of the legendary John Madden. Few individuals meant as much to the growth and popularity of professional football as Coach Madden, whose impact on the game both on and off the field were immeasurable. The thoughts and prayers of the Raider Nation are with Virginia, Joseph, Michael, and the entire Madden family at this time." You take a look back over his coaching career and what a career it was, going from the AFL to the NFL after the league merged, winning more than 100 games in those 10 seasons with the Raiders, 7 division titles, and of course that win back in Super Bowl 11. And as you just saw, John Madden was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2006.
And the man who was the MC in 2006 in Canton, Ohio, when John Madden went into the Hall of Fame, and the man who was synonymous with the NFL here at ESPN, Chris Berman, joins us now.
Hey, John.
And, we mark everything, right? Everything, every graphic is merger, pre-merger.
Right.
You're a pre-merger guy. What did John Madden mean is too big a question. So I want to start pre-merger and just your first recollections of John Madden, the coach.
Well, here was this large coach that you knew was in his young 30s, and his teams were great. He was an assistant on the Raiders Super Bowl team, Super Bowl II. And then, of course, coached in all those championship games and had so many Hall of Famers. And you talk about a team, John, pre-merger and then into the AFC in the 70s that was a bunch of characters, and I say that in a loose way, and I know a lot of those guys, but they all played hard. They all came together. John didn't worry about haircuts, a lot of things. When I think of John Madden, the coach, I think of a team that was always in it. And sometimes, oh, well, he was 1-6 in championship games. Whoa, 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 whoa. Have you heard of the Pittsburgh Steelers of the 70s? Have you heard of the Miami Dolphins of the 70s? The Chiefs beat them one time, and they won the Super Bowl. So with John Madden on his teams, they were always in it. They were always tough. They were never out of it. And the grit that they, and the wildness that, maybe that was part of inner John a little bit, you know? He was a lineman. He played both ways, I guess, back in college. So there you go.
Yeah, he would have been probably the first players coach. We talk about now how they get along,
Right.
and as you said, some of the characters and what those
Oh,
Raiders
my
teams
goodness.
did, and yet they came out and performed on Sunday. So I think in that regard, he was very much a players coach. Talk about 1-6, and yet what did the Super Bowl win do for him and his legacy? Because he won with great success.
Yeah.
To have that championship is...
Well, and it was the first for the Raiders. So the first one for the Oakland Raiders, and John being carried off, and I think the shot is up here somewhere. And he had, like I said, it shouldn't be a win in the Super Bowl to legitimize everything, because he won more than 3/4 of his regular season games. That's actually impossible, isn't it, John?
Right.
But he did. So it meant that that flame that the Raiders have is still, I know it's Al's, obviously, but that first Super Bowl, that was the torch. So it didn't legitimize everything he did, but it was like, it reminded people, like, toward the end of his coaching career, which began at 32, that he's a hell of a coach. And you don't have to win 5 Super Bowls to be a hell of a coach. He was in the running for a ton of them.
So we kind of get to know him. He's the coach of the Raiders. So everybody kind of knows that. But then over 30 years in broadcasting, like, we got to know him like he was, like he felt like he broadcast
right here.
to me, right? Like that. I mean, I realize there's millions of people. Felt like he was just talking to me, which is a gift.
Unbelievable gift, because you and I, maybe, Michael, we're big football fans, for example. So we talked to them because he coached the Raiders, and my goodness, okay, now it might be a kind of a half football fan. Oh, he made the game understandable to me. And now I'm a casual football fan, and not because of the sound effects of this. This guy is into it. I don't really get it. I'm talking about a casual football fan, but I'm going to sit down and watch this. So he made what can be a complicated game, this is as a broadcaster, he made it fun. He made it interesting, as if the games aren't interesting themselves. He made it understandable, and he put a smile on your face while you're watching these guys. You know what it can be like the final few minutes of a close game, but he made it not life and death to the viewer. He made it, I can't leave now, and he made it for every man. John was for every man. And maybe that, relating to all those wild players, not that they all were, and some who might have been straight, maybe that made him better as a broadcaster, because you have to talk to everybody. But he never veered from being himself. What a great trait to have as a human being, right? Yeah. He was never larger than life. He was large, obviously. He was never larger than life. Like, the broadcast was, this is fun. Didn't fun jump through the screen to you? It did to me.
Yeah, yeah. And you said talking about things that made it understandable. But I think it was the title of his first book, when he's 1 knee equals 2 feet. Don't worry about 2 feet down. He's like, no, if you get your knee, 1 knee equals 2 feet. And those kind of things are what resonated with him. Casual fan, football, but he resonated much larger than all of that. And I don't know if it was the Miller Lite commercials or whatever it was, but like, everybody knew John. You couldn't go anywhere that people didn't know John Madden, which is incredible being a football coach.
Right, and a lot of people later on in his broadcast career, he was a coach, was he? I mean, I know he knows football, but I don't remember him as and to you and I, to me, it's like, what? So, and then some, even the video games now, some people, he was on TV? Yeah, well, actually, he was for 3 decades. Him and Pat, him and Al, as good as it gets, say no more. So you say John Madden, but they don't necessarily know what put him in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. They know him as someone that must be enjoyable to be with. I'll put it this way, John. I mean, he was everybody's friend, even though a small percentage of people ever actually met him. But everyone felt like he was their friend, and so we've all lost a friend tonight.
And through all that, the video game, whether the endorsements, the broadcasting, he was revered by football people because he never stopped being a football guy first.
Important, and he said that. I mean, all the things you're going to read tonight, tomorrow, that all the success becomes, or if it's, I don't think he used the word success. I'm still a coach. I still love the game. I still love the players. He was like you. I'd be at games with him sometimes. I'd talk some. I mean, we were around, but he had a broadcast to do, and I had things to do, and we weren't wasting time. But when he walked down the hall into the booth, you knew, well, this is big. There goes football. Right down the hall, but he didn't walk like that. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like he didn't, hey, I'm here, so here's the game. No. But when he walked by, it was, this is real football here for the next 3 hours, you know?
Give me a play. We're going to show a bunch of them that you associate with John Madden, because we've talked about the sea of hands when we were getting ready for these. Give me one that you think of.
Well, think of the games he was in, not all that he won, obviously. When we start with the Immaculate Reception, which was an unbelievable game. The Raiders came from behind the last minute, Stabler off the bench, etc. Think of all the George Blanda games in the 70s. So George was 40. I mean, now Tom Brady is made, okay, but forget that.
No, look the 100.
George, well, but he won games like 4 or 5 with his foot and with his arm. The Sea of Hands you brought up. The Holy Roller was Old Man Willie, Bill King. That was the voice of the Raiders. The Goes to the Post. So I got to pick one of those. We've got to pick one that they won. Well, let's see. Yeah, well, that would be the Sea of Hands right there. That's they finally quelled the Dolphins, who, you know, had won a couple of years, won undefeated, and beat them in the championship game one time. The Goes to the Post, Baltimore, you know, to Dave Casper, and here it is. Guys, this is almost if we. I kind of like this one because one of his plays on the road, and I mean, again, that's football. The old horseshoe at Memorial Stadium. I mean, it's like, ooh.
Sort of like his career as a whole. It's hard to pick any just one thing.
No, but he only 10-year coach.
10 years.
And we just mentioned iconic plays. He hasn't coached for 40 years, or you know, and we lost him. A half a century in football, delivering it either on the sidelines, in the broadcast booth, and will be much more with the video games going. You talk about making a mark. I mean, the commissioner said, John, you know, he was football. He was All-American.
And as you said, did all of that for those 50 years with a smile, and even though there was temper in there on occasion on the sideline, with a joy that was infectious.
That's the only reason that you know, and Mike, we're smiling tonight because I think he'd want us to do it. We're very sad to lose him, obviously, 85. But his spirit will live on for another half century. I mean, he made that much of a mark. We're all lucky to hear him, see him. A few of us that know him, and those that didn't know him, we're lucky to have him. I'm sorry for his wife Virginia. Son Joe played at Brown, so a little bit of a family there. Son Mike, sorry to all of them, and but he was America's friend.
Well, our good fortune to have you here tonight.
They should say that about all of us one day, but they won't.
Our good fortune to have you tonight, Chris Berman, for your insight, for your time, for your expertise. Thank you.
Nice to be in.
Chris Berman.
John, Chris, thanks a lot. So you guys mentioned Al Michaels, one of the legendary broadcasters to sit alongside a legendary broadcaster in John Madden. He issued the following statement. Of course, they partnered on Monday Night Football. Quote, "The term Renaissance man is tossed around a little too loosely these days, but John was as close as you can come. A dear friend, a wonderful partner in the broadcast booth, and a man who brought so much joy to so many people. I will miss him enormously." Well, the Raiders tweeted this photo of owner Mark Davis honoring John Madden at 6 p.m. local time, which was the original kickoff time for Monday Night Football back in the day. Davis said, quote, "Tonight, I light the torch in honor of and tribute to John Madden and Al Davis, who declared that the fire that burns the brightest in the Raiders organization is the will to win." Much more on the life of John Madden tonight here on SportsCenter.
The DQ chicken strip basket and rotisserie.
Against the tough run defense, can West Virginia find a way to punch it in? Mathis.
Frames. Start anything. We just empower them. We give them.
Can you hear me? You're moving past our monitor radius.
Oh, and there's Buck Rogers. Hi, Buck.
Well, hello there.
Hey, here comes the Starship Enterprise.
Sir, contact with an object. It's moving toward us. It's coming at light speed.
Nice invisible plane.
Right here on MeTV, Sioux Falls 13.3.
Go to DakotaNewsNow.com and stay connected.
It's highly active peroxide droplets.
I think that's right, and I think Senator Reid knows what's at stake here in this country. He knows that this, you could argue, is a national emergency moment for American democracy. It's fragile. Its institutions were tested. Reid spoke out about that during the Trump presidency, and I think he's thinking ahead to what the next few years could be like if voting rights is not enacted. That's a view shared, by the way, by a lot of activists in the Democratic Party, but you don't hear that urgency in the message from Democratic leaders elected in Washington, and I think Reid, as you just played in that clip there, is trying to change or create momentum, by the way, to try to fortify those institutions here.
Rest in peace, Harry Reid. His wife put out a beautiful statement, which you all can read, but our thoughts are with his family tonight. Phil Rucker, Dr. Erwin Redlener, Joyce Vance, good to see all of you. Thank you. And coming up, the Supreme Court is about to weigh in on a couple of crucial cases, including one concerning vaccine mandates. Neil Katyal has made plenty of arguments before the court, and he's standing by for us. Later, a closer look at the struggle between public health and politics and the confusion that comes with mixed messaging. The 11th hour just getting underway on the last Tuesday night of 2021.
Like to go to work with for one day.
Don't miss the 5 she was teaching me to make during the pandemic. And all of a sudden she was gone, and I.
The change also affects other state employees who work 12-hour shifts.
You can search for those fascinating details.
Narduzzi, the head coach of Pitt, who spent all those years as defensive coordinator in East Lansing.
Drink me.
Real cowboys get customized car insurance with Liberty Mutual, so we only pay for what we need.
Hey, Tex, can someone else get a turn?
Yeah, hang on, I'm about to break my own record. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty. John Madden, Hall of Fame coach, groundbreaking broadcaster, video game guy for a generation, died Tuesday at the age of 85. Fiery and temperamental on the sidelines, he won 103 games in a Super Bowl in just 10 seasons. Stress of the game gave the man an ulcer. He got out at age 42 and became far more famous in the broadcast booth than for Madden football video games. Impacted the game in ways great and small. The Lombardi Trophy and the yellow first down line sort of spawned by him. Plenty of love for Madden pouring in on Twitter, as you can imagine. Begin with Troy Aikman here, who said, John Madden was a treasure. He was a gift. He was an incredible friend. R.I.P. John. He loved those Cowboys teams that Aikman played on. Jerry Rice, also with the Twitter, a coaching and broadcasting legend, loved by all. You'll be missed. R.I.P. John Madden. Cooper Kupp, current player right now. You know he loved him. The road to Easy Street goes through the sewer. John Madden, R.I.P.
Joining us now here on SportsCenter to give us a little more context into the life and career of John Madden is an icon in his own right when it comes to sports broadcasting, Bob Costas. Bob, you know, when we talk about certain names and we throw the terms around like icons and legends, and I'll be the first to admit sometimes I do it too loosely, but when it comes to John Madden, how fitting is that term?
Yeah, both of those terms truly apply. And you're right, Michael. Sometimes we toss them around and they're less than fully accurate. But in the case of John Madden, he fits the bill, no question about it. It's interesting to note that anybody under the age of 50 really has no firsthand recollection of him as a coach. And yet, younger people definitely know who John Madden is, either through his broadcasting career or through the commercials and on an ongoing basis year after year through the Madden video game. I mean, he was not just an important football figure. He was a part of American pop culture.
How many people have been in movies, hosted SNL, voiced a character on The Simpsons, was in a Miller Lite commercial, and also had a video game? When you talk about pop culture, I mean, John Madden pretty much did everything, Bob.
Yeah, he checked a whole lot of boxes, and he did it while being 100% himself. There was no blueprint for being John Madden, either the way he coached or the way he became a public figure after coaching. Just by happenstance, I was the guy asked to do play-by-play for his audition game. And even though John was very nervous and definitely didn't have any plan to be a broadcaster, it was just something he kind of shrugged his shoulders about and said, yeah, let me see, I'll give it a try. After 4 quarters, I couldn't have predicted that he would have the spectacular career he did, but I certainly knew after that one game that he could be a very good broadcaster if he wanted to be.
Yeah, it turned out to be one of the best of all time. And the interesting thing about his career in broadcasting, Bob, is he approached it the same way he did coaching. He was breaking down film and having the production crew come into those film sessions to give them a better idea in terms of how they're going to cover that game that particular week. From your standpoint, how valuable was it what he was doing in the way he had impacted sports broadcasting?
You know, most of my career covering football was as a host. I did some play-by-play in the early 80s, but mostly as a host. But I was totally aware of what John Madden did, not just in his own career, but the way he affected everything. The way games were produced, the way they were directed, and the way other broadcasters, play-by-play men and analysts both, prepared. It was not standard procedure until John came along to have a scheduled meeting with the head coach and with maybe the quarterback and several other key players the day before the game. It was sort of just catch as catch can. And John said, no, we're going to do this in a different way. There's going to be a standard way that we prepare.
We talk about all the things he did in his career, and the NFL clearly has benefited from that. He was a vivacious personality when he was winning that Super Bowl for the Raiders back in the 70s. He became a broadcaster that people knew even if they didn't know the teams that were playing. And for young kids, as you mentioned earlier, that knew him from a video game standpoint, that also led to the popularity of the NFL. In your estimation, Bob, what has been his value to the growth of the league since going back to the 70s when he was there in Oakland?
Very, very hard to overstate it. He was a genuine character. People related to him. He was simultaneously an everyman and yet totally unique, which is an interesting combination. There was no one else quite like him, and yet he was completely relatable to the average fan. And what he was able to transmit, and this is a really important quality, and not everybody has it, he was able to transmit enjoyment. He was enjoying what he did. Yes, he was an expert, but you could feel how much he enjoyed it.
Sports is supposed to be fun, and John Madden seemed like he was having fun with each and every broadcast. And as you said, Bob, it made its way into the living rooms of millions and millions of people each and every time he was in the booth. We appreciate the time, Bob.
Thank you, Michael.
ESPN's president, Jimmy Pitaro, a statement here on John Madden released this evening. John Madden was an iconic figure, transitioning from a successful coach to one of the most impactful and distinctive broadcasters in history across all genres. His love of football was only matched by a fan's admiration for him. He will forever be synonymous with the game.
Remembering John Madden, we could do it all night, but we have so many more voices to share the legacy that was the man that was simply football.
There are lots of ways to love that chicken from Popeyes, like our sandwich and our nuggets. Both are.
Jordan Howden ended up doing a nice job to knock that ball away. The very unusual formation did not work.
When Congress used the words grave danger, they weren't talking about undertakers or something like that. They were talking about exactly this. Many Americans right now are afraid to go to work because they're going to be exposed to the virus. That's what OSHA is designed to stand for, and that's why I think it's not a hard case next week.
Yeah, that's even stepped up since this was first filed. So again, that date is on the 7th of January. I also want to ask you about Harry Reid, because
Each crew's out there, and I say, and they're the sound guys, and I say, hey, we could have done this without y'all tonight.
Show people what's happening. Having people in Pierre and in Aberdeen helps.
And you've told me.
Rosenquist misses, but gets her own rebound, scores, gets fouled, makes the free throw. She had 31 points. They win it, 67-66. To Aberdeen, where the top-ranked Cavaliers of Roncalli hosting the Wolverines of Harriet Selby tonight. Looking good for Derek Larson. That's Ava Hansen hitting the three. She's a freshman. Then Olivia Hansen nailing the
injury sidelined her for several months. Avery Broughton and the Corsica Stickney Jaguars were off to a 9-2 start last season, and then came a bump in the road. Broughton, their leading scorer, tore her ACL in late January.
She was boxing out on a free throw and got a girl collided with her from the side and just kind of took out right at the knee. And so we went in the next day, and that's when.
January 6th attack on the Capitol approaches. We're learning more tonight about what to expect from the House Select Committee investigating it, most significantly about when the accountability process might actually go public. CNN has learned that the committee plans to hold hearings, be followed by an interim report by summer and a full report by the fall, though the timeline is said to be flexible. Members have, as you know, already interviewed more than 300 witnesses and have issued dozens of subpoenas. As for what we might get to see when we actually see it on TV, we're joined by David Gergens.
Run to end the half, led by Vcr. She had 27. They couldn't stop her. The Titans led almost the whole way. But in the second half, watch this block by Hillary Behrens. Had only 2 points in the first half. She'll stop, she'll pop. She wanted to make the highlights. She did. She had 12 points, 10 in the second half. And she would pass to Sydney Thuy, who hit the game winner with a second left as the Lynx survived what looked to be a big upset. 61-60 was your final. Brandon Valley victorious. Roncalli 59-28, and Dakota Valley 67-66 in that great game. As for guys' games of ranked teams, Dakota Valley wins big, winner wins big, and updating that should be 51-46 White River in the final minute. Looks like the Tigers are going to win there. The Pierre Governors certainly know what it takes to win. Several of their basketball players were on the football team that made it 5 straight state titles. And the basketball team has picked up where the football team, which won the state title, left off. New head coach Brianna Kusler enjoys having so many multi-sport athletes on her team, and she knows that only makes her 5th-ranked basketball team that much better. And so far, they're undefeated 4 games into the season.
This fall we've had, naturally the success that they had on the football field has played in and translated really well here, and we have a lot of athletes. And I talked the other day about how important relationships are, and not only with the kids but with other coaches. We all share athletes here, and that's something that we have very few basketball-only kids.
And you can see just where that confidence from other sports carries over to the basketball court for Brianna's team. They are certainly looking good so far with 4 straight victories to start the season under the first female to coach a boys AA team in South Dakota history. And finally, the Timberwolves hosted the Celtics last night. They won that game. Tonight it was the Knickerbockers, and Malik Beasley was probably, even though he didn't shoot well, he still had 20 points in this game. There he is. Let's go to the scoreboard, though. They just couldn't score enough. They lose 96-88 to the Knicks, short for Knickerbockers. That's sports. We'll be right back.
Don't let's.
These treatment programs are proven to work.
A good throw. This mark in NFL history. During his decade guiding the silver and black, John Madden never had a losing season.
Like John Madden, Mike Holmgren won a Lombardi Trophy for winning a Super Bowl. He coached in 2 others with the Green Bay Packers and the Seattle Seahawks. He's with us now on SportsCenter. And Coach Holmgren, if we could, let's go back to when you were a young, up-and-coming, a starting coach in the high school areas in the Bay Area. And there's John Madden at really the height of his success with the Oakland Raiders. How was he revered or looked at by folks that you were with at that time?
Well, you know, John, thank you, John, for having me on. But John Madden was the man. I mean, as a high school coach for myself at the time, and being a Bay Area guy my whole life, you know, he was special. He had done a lot of stuff already, and he had a lot of stuff to do. And you know, I think young people, young guys who were in the coaching profession looked up to him and thought about him. And honestly, after that, he became a good friend of mine.
He's out of the business in terms of head coaching at an age just before you get your head coaching job. You're in your early 40s. He's out. Can you fathom that in this day and age? That guy gave it up as you were getting started.
You know, John, I actually asked him that question at one point in my career. You know, why he got out when he did. Because no, I mean, look at it today. If coaches are as successful as he was, they don't just stop. And he stopped, and he had reasons for it. And bless his heart, he wanted to do something else, and he had accomplished what he wanted to accomplish. And no, that was very unique in this business.
How did that friendship between you two develop and grow?
Well, in broadcasting, he would broadcast our games, and so we're both from the Bay Area. We had we had similarities, but also differences in the Bay Area. I have a home in Santa Cruz, California, and every summer we'd go down there. Kathy and I would go down to Carmel, and bang, John would be in this one coffee shop, and every time I'd go in there and we'd sit and talk football. So we became pretty good friends, I think. And then when I was able to take a step back and decide kind of some of the things I wanted to do with my future, I went to him. He was a mentor to me. Mm-hmm. And you know, and not only a friend but a mentor.
So if there was a piece of advice that you would think is the most important one he ever dispensed to you, what would that have been?
He goes, you know, he was reluctant to just say, do this, but he said, believe in yourself, believe in your dreams, and stick with it. And if the time comes when you want to change, believe you're doing the right thing, and then when you do that, just go hard at it.
He had an affinity for a lot of your guys. He loved Brett Favre. He liked Reggie White. He liked Sean Alexander. What was it about those guys? Was there a common characteristic in those players that he sort of took a shine to?
You know what, John? I wouldn't say that. I would say that he respected great effort and great players. And of course Brett. You know, Brett. I would say he loved Brett, and he loved Brett because Brett was a little bit out there, you know, and John liked that. He probably reminded him of some of the guys he had on the Raiders.
Brett Favre might have had a little Kenny Stabler in him. Leave me with this one, because so many people, depending on when your generation, and we'll hear this a lot throughout our program and coverage of John Madden, he was the video game guy, he was the broadcaster. Why is it amongst people like you, head coaches, guys in the profession, never stop seeing him and revering him as a football coach?
Well, I think it's generational. I mean, I think you know, the Madden games and all that kind of stuff that people playing now. Okay, that's one thing, but he was a mentor to me, and I think people my age and people that knew him when he was broadcasting and yet coming in and being a friend to you in your facility and being able to ask him questions about stuff, and I think that's what we got out of it. You know, he was a great football coach, but honestly, he was a great friend.
Well, you certainly have helped in that endeavor in helping to give us more information on John Madden and who he was as a football coach. Mike Holmgren, thanks so much, and good luck to you, and best in the new year.
Hey, same to you, John. Thank you very much.
Well, that fella right there, Peyton Manning, has got a sense of history when it comes to the game. 5-time NFL MVP. Here's what Peyton Manning had to say. It was an honor and privilege to know Coach Madden, and my thoughts and prayers are with his family. As I said at my retirement press conference, my grandfather always loved John Madden. My rookie year, he was always asking if Madden and Summerall were going to broadcast one of the Colts games. And I said, Papa, the Colts are 2-8, and we're playing the Bengals, who are 3-7. Madden and Summerall don't do those games. But the next year we played the Cowboys with John Madden and Pat Summerall broadcasting the game. My grandfather was so excited. We won the game that day, and John Madden said the Colts are on their way. When John Madden says that meant something. I always appreciated his friendship and support of my football career. There'll never be another like him. May God's peace be with his family. Rest in peace, Coach Madden.
Joining us now in Sports Center, Steve Young, and his teams were so good back in the Niner days that John Madden called several of Steve's game. And Steve, I wonder from a player standpoint back then, what was it like when you knew that John Madden was going to be calling your game?
Well, we had a lot of big games through the years, and John and Pat did most of the games. It felt like every week it was, they were kind of the 49er broadcasting booth. But it was, in many ways, John was iconic. And I remember the first time I met him, he was doing a game. I want to say we were in Washington, playing in Washington, and what he would do is he'd park the bus, the Madden Cruiser, right outside the locker room doors, and then you'd come out and you do your production meeting. And so it was the first time that I was ever going to say hello to him, Bay Area guy, and known him for the Raiders for all the time. And I climb on the bus, and I don't even sit down. He doesn't even say hello. He goes, "Did you comb your hair with a pork chop?" and I like, I mean, here's John Madden. I just met him. And he's like, I go, no, I didn't comb with a pork chop. And Pat Summerall goes, it's really funny. And then, so the next day, we're doing the game. I'm playing pretty well. And he goes, you know what? I was with Steve Young yesterday on the bus, and he combs his hair with a pork chop. And so nationwide, I mean, the next 20 years, that's anyone ever talking about. I was like, hey, do you comb your hair with a pork chop? Because that was the power of Madden. And really, to pay this story off, 20 years later, we're at the Madden studios over in Pleasanton near his home, where he lived in Pleasanton, California. And we would tape commercials there. People would Jerry Rice and I were doing a Van Heusen commercial for suits and so forth and ties. And Madden shows up. He comes down the street, and John shows up, and I'm in the other, and then he goes, he throws a pork chop through the door. It's like 20 years later, I can't get rid of it. But I think what the story is today for me, the heartfelt thing is that I bet you, everybody has a pork chop story with John Madden. Something about the interaction that you had was personal. It was funny. It was engaging. It was authentic. It was, I don't know. It just, that I think he's beloved because of the vulnerability that he had you feel, and the way that he kind of exuded that. So I through the years, that was the first time I met him, was the pork chop story, and then for years and years we laughed about all kinds of things. In fact, I enjoyed getting on the bus because then I know I could relax. I could laugh a little bit. Before a big game, we're playing the Cowboys, playing the Packers, and so I get on the bus. I knew I was going to enjoy it for 15, 20 minutes and relax, and I looked forward to it, to getting on with Pat and Coach Madden.
Steve, you mentioned the Bay Area. That's, of course, where he grew up. Went to colleges, multiple colleges there in the Bay Area, and of course, Coach Oakland. He was a frequent guest on local radio for decades, even while he was doing national television there in the Bay Area. For someone who spent a large portion of their lives in that area of the country, what did John Madden mean to that region?
Well, he had a famous show on KCBS, and so and I was doing a show on KMBR, and we would go back and forth. He would say something to egg me on, and then they'd get on the show. Did you hear what John said about you today? I'm like, oh, will you tell him? We would have conversations through the radio show, back and forth. I mean, but Coach was, in many ways, the NFL, the people that love the NFL today is so entrenched in society, and in many ways its popularity was burgeoning because of Coach Madden, the way that he allowed, I think for
This is a coordinated monthly test of the broadcast stations of your area. Equipment that can quickly warn you during an emergency is being tested. If this had been an actual emergency, official messages would have followed the alert tones. This station serves the Sioux Falls area. This concludes this test of the emergency alert system.
things that had happened to the bus or to the people he ran into or the things he saw. I mean, he was a phenomenal storyteller. You could ask him any question, and he would have a story to go along with the principle that he just wanted to teach there, and it was always fun and engaging.
He was the uncle that we all wish we had, and a few times in the fall, we had him, at least for a couple hours on national television. Steve Young, appreciate the insight and the stories here on SportsCenter.
My best to Virginia family.
When SportsCenter continues, the Lakers try to end a 5-game skid. How do you do that? Well, wouldn't hurt to invite the Rockets, and then if maybe Russ and LeBron could get a triple-double.
I gotta know who oven baked my bacon. Who did it? Tyler. Come on over here, man.
Oh, wow. Ow. Choose wisely.